I think that'll be priceless, I really do. So, our last speaker told you how to protect the assets. Now we're going to tell you how to spend the assets. We have Matt and Kyle from Outlook. I think most of you have gotten some information from them. And I was talking to Tim, I said, you know, the money that we're talking about here is really fun money. Joe said it's really casino money. It's money that is at risk, and it's got great upside, but it should not be your kids' savings, it should not be your retirement account. This is stuff that if you lose it, so it's really bad, but it's not going to compromise your lifestyle. And the example I give is, I invested in my brother's company about 10 years ago, $100,000, and it was risky, and I knew that it was, but it had a high upside potential, and it paid off 10 to 1. That's a great return. It was a great day when we cashed out. So he goes to another company and says, oh, if you like the last one, you're going to like this one even better. So I put another 100 into that one. If I get 50 out of it, I'll be lucky. And that's the kind of investment that I would attribute this to. You guys probably think there's less risk, but it's a risky investment. It just is. High return, great returns. So with that introduction, Matt and Kyle.
Hey, thanks. All right. I think that'll get you fired up.
That's like it's received.
That touches a chord with Matt. But so anyway, I've had the luxury and privilege of meeting some of you here, or talking to you either via the phone or email. And Jim was kind enough to give me all your contact information, so you kind of see examples of what we do. I guess I wanted to start first. I don't have PowerPoints, and I'm not going to be writing anything down, so this is pretty straightforward. My background a little bit. I born and raised in Wausau. Was there forever. I left for college, came back. My family's there. Out of college, started in banking and finance. Did securities, and eventually I played a little racquetball in between there, and that's ultimately how I met Matt. This is 20 plus years ago, so it's been a long time. So I traveled around, met Matt, we traveled around together and played, and then ultimately I had to work and actually earn some money. So we did, what I did was I actually got into the appraisal industry, so that's actually how I've come to meet Tim, Jim and Krista. I took over for a gentleman here in the Stevens Point area, and started doing that in 2004, 5, and owned several apartments myself, and then yeah, I did appraising, and a couple years back, beginning in 2017, along this entire time, Matt also did real estate, and we'll transition into that too, but so I've always shared information and data with him and what I needed for real estate, and then what else. In 2017, I was looking for kind of a change in what I wanted to do, and I actually got involved in the investment side of things with Matt and getting money for private equity deals and investing myself. And it's morphed a little more into this year. I've taken over the role of dealing with investor relations and heading up the investor relations. And so now that's kind of my duty in this whole thing. And along with presenting the information to you and answering questions you might have. But so Outlook is a family of companies. There's Outlook Development Group, there's Outlook Management Group, and then there's Outlook Investment Group, which is what you guys have seen. I think everybody's seen Sweden or the Cambridge Semantics opportunity. So those are private equity deals. Matt actually will touch base on the development he started in real estate, but that was really, that's my focus now, is bringing these deals and opportunities to you guys. And I come from the angle of an investor, no different than you guys would be or are. Some of you have invested, some of you are considering it now, or some of you may in the future, but I came at it from the, I've learned a lot over the last 18 months, especially like what it means to be a limited partner, how the structures look, what is the risk, the reward, the opportunities that are available. I think the fascinating part from the investor side is that there are opportunities that really aren't available to the general public. I guess, I think I always reference Shark Tank. All these deals are brought to like Mark Cubans and all these guys, and they look at these deals and share them, and ironically enough, Matt has access to these same deals, and we basically get access to these deals as, for me, as just the normal guy to, and as you as entrepreneurs and business owners to invest in other companies, and you guys and gals can all appreciate that. So that's what I find the fascinating part about the opportunities, and even a little more on the organizational side of things. I'm very, lack of a better word, anal as far as like organizational stuff and getting the appraiser side of me. Wanted to have all the information, real-time updates, getting in touch with people and keeping them in the loop on various projects. So we've created a platform that I've given some of you access to, and basically what it should be fully functional by the end of the month, I think, maybe 4 weeks. So it'll be a real-time platform. It'll enhance the overall investor experience. You'll have, updates, news, docs, K1s for whatever investments you might be in. Just all the information that you would expect when you invest into, these types of deals. And I guess that really covers it from my end. And so I guess I'll leave you give your background on the Outlook development and the deal access. So.
Perfect. Actually, Kyle I want to say about racquetball, this guy is one of the best racquetball players like in the world. A lot of people, he doesn't like to tell the story, but legitimately we both would play some pretty high level racquetball. We both went down to play the US Open and the pros. And the guy who won the US Open, this would be like Roger, well, we're not going to compare it to tennis, but it'd be like, Roger Federer wins, the US Open. The next week we played a pro stop down in West Dallas here in Milwaukee, and Kyle beat the U.S. Open champion a week after the guy just won the U.S. Open. So that's a great story. And the guy threw his bag in the garbage, and he broke all his rackets.
Did they take a point away from him? Yeah.
So we loved it. We were following him around. We wanted to see how angry the guy was going to be. But Kyle and I have been friends for 20 plus years. We've competed in sports together, and we've also started talking about some of the different common interests that we had in the investing side of things. And so, I'm really fired up to be able to work, hand in hand on some of the opportunities that we have. I know, Fritz, you mentioned, risk. There was like a trigger in my head because, it just depends on how you perceive risk. So, like, I've always been an entrepreneur my whole life. That's all I know. I've never worked for anybody. I've never got a paycheck. I've always been a person that's tried to create my own opportunities. And I always felt like, to me, that had the least amount of risk to it. I always feel like you always should bet on yourself. Ironically, I just came from golf, and there's people that bet on the other guys, and they don't bet on themselves. They go, you have no control. What if this guy, butchers a shot? So I always bet on myself. And, I think a lot of people that don't understand that would look and say, well, you take a lot of risk. And I say, well, I feel like you take a lot of risk. What do you do with your money? You invest in something that you don't know the people. Say you're investing in a public stock. If you don't know the CEO and the executive suite, you don't know what has happened until it's already happened, until you find out on the earnings call or the annual reports. The news is stale. You don't really know what the problems are at the company. You don't really know how they solve the problems. So to me, then you're a gambler. You're not an investor. You turn on the TV and you find out if you're going to win or lose. And if anybody else, tells you that they know those things, they're gambling too, because they're trying to find out in not a real-time situation. So like whether we invest in our real estate deals that we're operators of or the private equity deals, we have very direct access to the entire management team, to the founders, to everybody up and down the whole C-level suite. And in a lot of cases, we're on the board, either as a board member, a board advisor, a board observer. So just like we have in our own businesses, we're helping solve real-time problems. I mean, to me, to define how successful you can be is to define how well of a problem solver you are. I mean, in all of our businesses, if you can solve 200 problems a day, little ones or big ones, that's going to add up to how well you can do what you do. So to me, that's less risky because I have the ability to impact the result. So that's the way I've always approached investing. If I can invest in something that I could help manipulate the outcome of it based on either what I can do or with the entire network of people that we have, which would be like all of you people. Because different folks are strong in different areas, whether they're in manufacturing or technology or healthcare, and then we really lean on everybody's expertise to help make really good decisions. So that was my thought on risk, though. I've always thought that that's less risky. But I can give you a little bit of background on Outlook Development Group, which is a company that I started. And then I can also talk a little bit about Outlook Investment Group, which is the platform that Kyle mentioned. And I can give you a little bit of my story, and then I'm happy to share stuff on a couple past deals if anybody wants to know, any of our successes or failures, like some of the examples that Fritz just gave a little bit earlier. Excuse me, and then I'm happy to talk about a couple live opportunities, because that's probably what people are most interested in. So, Outlook Development Group, I started back in 2005. I was 25 years old. Started the development company. My background prior to that was I got into the real estate business on the commercial real estate side as an intern at MLG Commercial, which was one of the bigger commercial real estate brokerage shops in town, just outside of Milwaukee. So I learned from people that were doing retail brokerage, industrial brokerage, office brokerage, residential development, business park development, a little bit of everything from everybody. There were 68 different brokers. I really fell in love with that business. I loved real estate. Followed on anybody that would let me, absorb anything that they would let me. I'd sit in the back of a 2-seat car for 8 hours and just take notes. And then I became a VP in their retail group. So I would start off doing shopping center leasing, working with national accounts to roll them out around the country, ultimately selling shopping centers. And I always thought, I only wanted to really do business with people I liked. So I would ask the question, to the people I was doing business with, why they were doing what they were doing. And I would learn a lot from that. And then I would ask them if I could put a little bit of money into the deals that they were doing. And I did, and I learned a little bit from that. And so I did that all for about 2.5 years. And then I started Outlook Development Group in 2005. And primarily at that time, all I really knew was retail. So we were developing and acquiring shopping centers. Stuff you'd find out in front of Walmart or Target, a lot of kind of strip center shopping centers that we could replicate over and over. And what happened actually, another friend of ours from racquetball that I didn't even know what he did, we just played racquetball for 20 years, was venting one night after our league, and he was telling me about a problem he had at work, and I said, tell me about it. Well, he ended up being, one of the real estate managers for Roundy's. So Pick and Save, Cops, Rainbow Foods, Mariano's in Chicago. And that was when Jewel Osco was leaving the Milwaukee market. And so they had a problem that they had 5 Jewel Oscos that were going to be leaving, and then Roundy's was going to be acquiring them, some of the real estate locations, and then they didn't want to own their real estate, so they were going to do long-term 20-year sale-leasebacks. But this had to happen in like less than 30 days. So that was kind of what took me into the grocery side of things. He got me connected there. We bought two Pick and Saves, long-term leases. And that whole relationship ended up working out over from then till now, where we own 7 grocery stores. With Cops, with Pick and Save, we developed the Mariano's Fresh Market in the South Loop of Chicago. And so it went from shopping centers, grocery, and then eventually healthcare on clinics of like Aurora Healthcare or UW Healthcare, Ascension, Columbia St. Mary's, Meritor, folks like that. And then further diversified into industrial, manufacturing, R&D, multifamily apartments, mobile home parks, and then being very entrepreneurial, like during the recession, everybody has their own problems. We recapped a couple of our own deals. You got to hustle, during that time period. But we also was very contrarian and bought probably 25 shopping centers from 2008 to 2012. 0 capital markets open, 0 liquidity in the market. But we became special situations investors at that point. We were there to solve people's special situation, whether it was a liquidity need or a credit need. And literally nothing changed with the value of those assets other than fast forward to 2013, the capital markets open back up, and we say, geez, we can go out and refinance our loans, but we can only get X amount of proceeds. And if we were a purchaser, we could get X plus a couple $1 million. And so that was the barometer to start selling some of the stuff that we've done. So in addition to the real estate, we would also buy distressed debt. Like the DeBartolo family was, DeBartolo Sr. was one of the founding people that invented the shopping mall. And then on the 49ers, like we bought some distressed debt that we would buy debt as an access, as a way to gain access to the underlying real estate. we'd recapitalize people's partnerships, we provide liquidity in that sense. So all of those things, and you know, we probably have done about 75 real estate deals, very agnostic, all of those different asset classes, because things ebb and flow differently. And one kind of part of the market is favorable, another part may be less favorable. It allows us to kind of play on each of those things. So, you know, I guess in addition to that, in '09 I started a management company, and that's actually run by its own executive management team, but that manages our whole real estate portfolio. And it also manages a lot of third-party real estate around the entire country. And it does that with a lot of the people that have been equity partners of ours, that we've enjoyed the way that we operate and work together. And then we've been able to do other things for them around the country. You know, so kind of where real estate morphed into private equity is when the capital markets started opening back up. You know, we probably did $500 million in real estate. And I looked at that and said, you know, now's a great time where, you know, the dynamics are shifting. And so I started taking, you know, and selling some assets, creating some very big liquidity events personally, but also for our investors. And I thought, you know, what is one of the ways that I would like to diversify just personally? And I wanted to also invest in other entrepreneurs and other operators, and people that I could kind of understand were wired, you know, similarly, and how could we help them. So I started making investments into some angel investments, into early stage companies, all the way to late stage companies. I started observing on some boards, I joined some boards, and then I built out my entire private equity network that way, which is very similar to how I built up my real estate network. You know, and the real estate network ended up being, you know, everything from high net worth individuals to family offices. I mean, to ultra high net worth, to family offices. We've had probably a dozen of like the individual, like Forbes 500 billionaires as partners. Insurance companies, pension funds. We've got Goldman Sachs balance sheet as one of our partners, so it allows us a lot of latitude to be able to do different deals differently with different people. My number one goal and my mission is always, I just want to do business with people I like, you know, because the money is kind of a commodity, and hopefully we all like each other, and I want to do things that you enjoy the ride together, and that you live the experience. There's not a lot of things that you can live the experience, and that's kind of what we're able to do. It's almost like experiential investing. So I've told Kyle, and you know, maybe Tim could relate on some of the stuff that he's been involved in. It's very addicting because you become curious. You too, Jim. You become curious. You now want to read. You want to talk about it. You want to ask other people their opinions on things, and it's one of those things that you're living the deal. And sure, you can have stuff that's good news that you're living. You can have stuff that's bad news that you're living. But you're actually like living it, which is, you know, kind of it's a neat thing. So as I started making those personal investments, other people that were in our real estate network that we would syndicate with said, would you offer up, we like that strategy, would you offer up your private equity deals and syndicate them just like you would your real estate deals? And I said, sure. I always look at the deals first. Before anybody would see a deal, it would be a deal that I already am deciding to do with my own money, that I have super strong conviction for. You know, we're not trying to keep the lights on, you know, at the office. We're not selling any sort of a product. These are things that I'm putting my own money in, that I would love to tell you why I like them. And if you like them, I'd love to have you join them. And if not, that's okay too. I don't have any sort of a fund. I'm not looking to cobble together money. These deals happen, they happen anyway. But I want to give people access to a variety of things, and the things that speak to them and the things that they like, for the reasons they like them, maybe they're the same. They can participate at whatever level that they want, you know, given that. You know, so we've done, in the last 5 years, we've made investments in 41 different operating companies. We've had one deal that lost all of its money, and that was a deal that I was observing on the board, and really could have went in. It was very much on the cusp of greatness, but also it also had that, you know, debt element on it where it could come crashing down. And that was one that we made an initial investment, and we had 4 other chances to make additional investments, and we decided not to do that. We wanted to kind of wait and see the business plan. So we'd rather invest at a higher valuation after you've accomplished more success. We have a lot of deals that have very much increased in value on paper, and ones that we've added significantly over time. That's the beauty of some of the deals that we're on the board of, is we may be involved from the initial state, and as things, you know, are executing and are positive, we are able to add incrementally to our position and maintain our pro rata rights. Those are, we love to add to our kind of perceived winners, so the odds end up being more and more, you know, in your favor. And then we've had some deals that we've exited that have been home run grand slam. I actually had it was hard to play golf today because I was getting messages on it. But like one of the deals that was probably my best deal, I don't even know if it's replicable, but so I was one of the first investors in the Juul e-cigarette. So I'm not proud of this like headline investment, but the Juul e-cigarette, and we did this with Hank Handelsman, who was the general partner and general counsel for the Pritzker organization. He's in Chicago since the early 70s. He was on the board of Juul. Nick Pritzker and his family office, Tau Capital, major investor in Juul. We invested in that at when the company had a $75 million valuation, and then invested again when the company had a $225 million valuation. We put $1.7 million into that deal, and I put almost 400 of that was my money. And we sold 2/3 of our stake in 2 of the vehicles at the end of last year for $2.5 billion, which was a big number. Today, I just sold another 1/3 of our remaining stake for $11.8 billion. But then they have a headline come out like FDA might shut down Juul. Like, does this guy sign the document? But you know, that's one of those things where that was a very life-changing deal, you know, and that also was a deal that had a lot of risk. And what changed on that deal, this was really crazy, because I'll tell you, this is the way things work. You know, like I mentioned, that Goldman Sachs was a partner. So Goldman Sachs actually introduced me to Kathy Ireland. Remember Kathy Ireland, like the supermodel? She's been very successful in different business ventures. Kathy Ireland, I met because she was doing a beauty brands type thing, but she also owned a vape shop called Cure. And her partner in the vape shop was Scott Gottlieb. The only reason that name makes sense is because no one knew what was going to happen, you know, when the election was going on, right? And so what happened was Trump got elected. Trump let go the previous FDA director. Trump put Scott Gottlieb in as the head of the FDA. He obviously sells his shares in Cure, but he's very pro, you know, e-cigarette. They lift the regulations, the floodgate opens. We go from 0 to 72% of the entire market share in 1 year. Went from 0 to $1.3 billion in revenue with $250 million EBITDA with no debt in 1 year. Crazy. Crazy. So I mean, but that was one of the catalysts that could have not happened, and they could have regulated it as like a tobacco product, and they could have gone the other way. We kind of thought which way we thought it was going to go, and it was a hunch that paid off. That had risk to it. Everybody said, I would have done that deal. Nobody wanted to do that deal. I did most of the deal. But that's like an example of just a monster, you know, home run. And we have plenty of deals that have been 2x, 3x, 5x, 8x, and you know, there's deals that could lose, and there's deals that I've seen that look like they could lose, and they come back from the dead, and they become a winner. They're all different, and I think that's where you got to kind of look and pick and choose what you like. So, you know, that's kind of the two different, the couple different companies and the dynamics. You know, so like right now, we set up a way that we could streamline the process on working with people and getting people access to the deals, getting access to the information. Because what kind of occurred to me is I looked at just what are the pain points that we'd solve for. Like real estate, private equity, it's still very archaic the way it's done. You still pick up the phone and you call someone, you go eat lunch with them, you know, you share some materials with them, you talk about the deal. But then, you know, on deals we have 2 weeks or a month to, you know, raise $10 million, say, you just can't touch everybody. So we looked at it and we saw we had 600 investors, which kind of blew my mind. It's really kind of spiderweb. And so how do we create a software platform that we kind of looked at solving the workflow to get everybody stuff? And so this, Kyle's like the brainchild of this, and he operates it. I'm not a very tech-savvy person. But so we've got a digital platform on Outlook Investment Group's website. You're able to click on a button that will take you to Secure Docs, and it'll create its own folder for you. It'll build a digital folder, so for any of the deals that you're looking at, it'll build a folder for Sweden, for example, one of the deals that we're going to talk about. It'll have the deal deck, it'll have the memos, it'll have frequently asked questions that are aggregated amongst everybody, and the results to them, you know, kind of real time as that happens. It'll take commitments, and it'll build the cap tables real time, so you can see how much of the deal has been subscribed, and that you've kind of locked in a position. And then if we have, you know, ads or updates, like that little news clip I mentioned today, I wouldn't be able to go back to the office till tomorrow to even send it to somebody. This would actually be able to pull stuff in real time, whether they're Google Alerts or Wall Street Journal, and it can ping all the investors. You're constantly touching everybody so that they have access to the news. But we can pull over newsletters, we can drag over K1s, you can alert people when there's something new so they can kind of be engaged, and the process goes really good. So that's something we're really excited about from an organizational standpoint. It's still in the early stages, but we'll get that to be a well-oiled machine. On the deals themselves, you know, we have 2 live deals right now. One of them is called Sweden, and hopefully everybody got the materials, and if anybody didn't, we're happy to send them to you. But a lot of these deals that we get, just to give you context, like Kyle mentioned, the one thing that we try to do is provide proprietary access to deals that otherwise would not be publicly available. And a lot of that happens because of the people I've done deals with in the past. I mean, if you've ever made money with somebody, you probably do more with that person. And if you like the person, you're willing to share kind of what else is going on in your world and your life. You know, so I gave the example of Jewel, and you know, that's kind of how Sweden came up, because I talked with Hank, and he was in Jewel, and he said, you know, there are other Jewel-like deals out there, and he said, I would love to talk about that. And so he sent us the Sweden opportunity, he sent us the Cambridge opportunity, and that's when we kind of started diving in and looking at it. And the reason that they like kind of us is that we are active investors. You know, we're not park the money and kind of wait for things to happen. We're constantly touching the management team. We're constantly trying to be a coach for them on the things that they need to be supplemented for, or areas that we feel like they're weak. We like to tell them that, or things that we can give them idea-wise from our network, whether it's customers or whether it's past, you know, industry experiences on things. And it helps basically create value on, you know, the investments themselves. So like a deal like Sweden, we got really brought in because of Hank and because of the Pritzkers. And what they brought in is kind of the Chicago club, I guess they'd call it. You know, and in this deal, the Koch brothers are coming in, Rothschilds, the Pritzkers, Louis Dreyfus' family office, and folks like that. And what ends up happening is, obviously these people are all very capable, is then I'll meet with them. We'll see who's the best fit for the board, what things that we can offer up each other from why we like the deal. We'll trade notes. We'll basically run co-due diligence with each other. And then when you like each other, you go, what else do you do? Well, we like real estate too, or we like, you know, this or that. And that's where a lot of that deal sharing starts. And I've witnessed it firsthand. I mean, we had a deal with the Pritzkers that they said, this is not where we're an expert in, but we'll bring in the eBay founder. And they'll bring in the Disney family office. And we had a deal that they brought in Paul Allen, that we looked at a factoring business with Paul Allen and Mark Zuckerberg's family office. And so the bench, from the due diligence standpoint, ends up being pretty robust. So it's not just Matt and Kyle, which is, you know, which is good, but we're all learning from each other too, which is nice. And then that leads to really good things. You know, so like Sweden, for example, that's a deal that we like a lot. I mean, Kyle and I just got back, and Sean from California. We were in Newport Beach with the founder, Stephen Chen, and the entire executive management team. We just spent 3 days with them. And we had a chance to, you know, meet Stephen, who's the founder, and you can just totally tell when you meet people in the first 10 seconds if they're special, if they've got it, if they, you know, are that kind of innovative person that can execute. And he was one of those guys, which was really, really nice. Surrounded himself with a very good management team as well that we felt very comfortable with. you know, we were actually able to try their product. I mean, so what they do is they're in the basically will replace sugar, so sugar and the sweetener market, in using the stevia plant, you know, which is all natural. They have the patents and the IP on the 6 out of the 7 different ways that you can extract from the stevia leaf, mix with our proprietary blend of enzymes to get 50 times more extraction of pure form, pure Reb M and Reb D stevia, which is our product's called Best Stevia. And that Reb M and Reb D is 250 times to 300 times sweeter than sugar, but it's non-GMO, it's all natural, it's from the stevia plant. It's FDA approved in all North America. It's got approved in Australia the other day. In fact, a lot of the approvals globally are happening a little bit at an accelerated pace, which is a little risk to the deal. We have to be able to supply the demand. No calories. So if you think about what we like to invest in things that are transformational investments, things that can transform an entire industry. I don't want to invest in a product that we're going to make that's just better than this product, because now your market is so small. So like the Juul example, someone has to either be a smoker or someone who wants to smoke. That's a very small, you know, part of the world population. With Sweegen, every person that lives on Earth is part of the market. So anything that goes in your mouth, whether it's, you know, soda or an alcoholic beverage or flavored water or any kind of food, yogurt, candy, but then things that are less obvious like pharma, nutraceuticals, tobacco, the Juul, anything that has flavoring. Your kid's cough syrup, anything. Every single thing has either sweetener or flavoring. It's really crazy when you start to pay attention to it, because every single thing you're touching or putting in your mouth is a product, right? And so, you know, we're pretty excited because we got to try some of the products, which was very important to us. And we got to try 100% Reb M stevia Coca-Cola. And so Stephen's been working with Coke for over 10 years, very privately under the radar. They didn't give him any of the money to figure this out. But now we have something very special that they're going to do a lot of business with us. It tasted kind of between a Diet Coke and a Coke Classic. That was like an easy product to kind of compare. We tasted it in lemonade. We tasted it in an Arnold Palmer, I guess it was a John Daly.
Yeah.
And then and they tasted
the concoction that the night before they had made that special for a rival.
Yeah,
Throwing that
exactly.
together. So.
And then I can't have dairy, but these guys tried the milkshake, and I think that was one that you guys really liked, that you thought was very comparable. You know, so that was just like an example of, all right, now people are demanding natural-based stuff. It isn't going to spike insulin. That, you know, you think about the things that it helps with obesity, with diabetes, hyperactivity, it could be anything. I'm hoping this is good, so I can not change my diet, which is terrible, and I would be better off for it. But, and then you think about the actual like investors that are, you know, being a part of this deal. All of those people also are major owners in a lot of the other companies that would be customers of ours. So it's very much a warm, you know, lead-in and introduction to do business with, you know, Kraft, for example, or Nestle, or Dannon, or Coke. And what really occurred to us is that, you know, raising $150 million to do a U.S. plant, so there's a lot of reasons that there's advantages of manufacturing in the U.S. right now, as well as global distribution. And, you know, the amount they can produce in one plant is $1 billion. They do $1 billion in one plant, 250 million in EBITDA, and that probably leads to a $10 billion market cap in one plant. What Coke buys in 1 year, he told us off the record, what Coke buys in 1 year on their sweeteners is $12 billion, just in Coke alone. Nestle said we could take the capacity of at least one plant with just our products. Dannon, I don't know if these are Dannon water, but that's a Nestle water. Dannon's going to put this in like their silk milk, in their flavored waters, in their yogurt, they can take the capacity of one plant. Ingredient, which by the way, two of the strategic let him in, because I'm gonna let them in on some other opportunities that we do that I think are very proprietary. And so this is kind of the beauty of it, and I guess it's much more of a math equation type investment if this pans out. You know, Chuck put in 20% of all the money himself. So he's probably, I don't know, overall I think he said $5 or $7 million.
Yep.
We're gonna invest in a convertible note that'll convert into the Series D round. That is a 10% accruing interest rate. 4% of that is current pay, or would actually get paid out. The other 6% is called PIK interest. It stands for paid in kind, which just means it accrues. And then when the next round closes, they feel like they'll have term sheets signed by the end of the year. There's 60 private equity companies in the data room. They've got strategics like Dell and IBM that also potentially could acquire the company, but also make a big strategic investment. And I asked Chuck, what do you think the valuation is going to go off at? And he said, I think it'll go off at 200 million plus. And so our convertible note is a convertible note with 10% just accruing interest, for a better term, and it'll convert with a 20% discount or an $80 million cap. So 20% discount probably isn't going to matter. You're probably going to hit the $80 million cap. So if it goes off at 200 and we're capped at 80, we have a ton of embedded value. That's probably a good enough deal on its own. But what we also have, which is really juicy, is we have warrant coverage. So we actually have, for every $1 million we invest, we have roughly 1.2 million shares of common stock warrants that are penny warrants. So we just exercise them right away. And what that does is that'll average down probably our capped note from 80 to probably 60. Could be 50, because there could be people that put in 300 and 500 and they don't get the warrants. We don't know that until the thing's closed out. So we feel like the likelihood, if we do that, we could actually add probably 3 to 3.5 times our money in value between when we close this now and the first part of next year, in January, February. So this is just the way that I view things and how I invest my own personal money. Sweden, super transformational. I think this thing could change the world. I think that the multiples on that, it's hard to even get your head around. I think that could be a 20x and beyond. I don't think it's going to be a 2x or 5x. I think what they're doing is going to be, one plant could make it 20x. Cambridge, I think, is a shorter term play. They could end up getting an offer from IBM or Dell for 200, and then we're done. We make a lot of money. Or they could end up getting, some private equity money, and maybe we're in it for 1 year to 3 years. But they've got a great backlog to execute the business with the pipeline that's in place. And I think we have a huge valuation opportunity here. So we're going to be able to put in, we told we're putting in 3, which we pretty much have. And
if we fill 3, we have access to probably
up to 10.
Up to 10, yeah.
Up to 10, so to me, say we put in 7, I think we would make $20 million in 6 months.
Even if
Given
it doesn't
given
sell.
that math, I mean, it could be off one way or the other, but I think that everybody that's part of it is also putting their money where their mouth is, for it as well. So I guess we're not trying to fool each other. They've got pretty good visibility into, stuff.
Investors in that too are like Peter Lynch.
So Peter Lynch, if you guys have heard of like the Fidelity Magellan Fund, so he was the founder of that. He's in the deal. David Rockefeller, he just died. Rockefeller Estate's in the deal. Fritz Hobbs, the chairman of Allied Banks, on the board of like Miller Coolers, he's in the deal. Hank is in the deal. The Fritzkers are in the deal. So it's kind of that same kind of club, just slightly different people. So we're happy to be a part of that. And we know a little bit about that space because it overlaps a little bit with Gray Meadow. Doesn't do the same thing that they do, but it's kind of, there is metadata that gets kind of pulled out of some of the data fabric. So that's one that we like a lot too, but the way that I think about it personally is I go, if I invest, I'll probably invest $300 grand of my own money in this one. I invest 300, and we can go 3.5x in a short period. My 300 covers my 300 plus my million. My 300 covers my million in Sweden too. So I feel like it's a trade. You know, so you're looking at covering different bets of your life. So
To break that technology down too, to like give you an idea, like an FDA approval, I think that in an old deck I read, it takes 12 years. So like this technology can help reduce that to 6. It can you know, the 2 hours that you talked about producing the 600 bit, to compare it to Oracle, it takes Oracle 9 days with their technology. So you can see the value add to companies using that. So
yeah.
and then that's pretty much it.
So your opinion is, the Sweden deal is gonna be capital gains, the Cambridge deal is gonna be ordinary income.
It might be.
I mean, just.
It might be. I mean, but
That's your opinion.
They don't have to sell. If they don't,
No,
even
I
if they
know,
don't
I
sell,
know, I'm just in
it's
general.
my,
As you go in, you gotta
my
think
personal
about that.
opinion, my gut feeling, actually I talk to a lot of these
Right.
guys,
Yeah.
is, you know, private equity comes in and says, hey, we're gonna give you, they're gonna raise $50 million on the Series D. We're gonna give you $50 million at $150 million pre-money. Not that interesting, but that means you take the 50 and you know it's gonna take you 3 years to grow to 400, and you're gonna have another round. Strategic comes in and says 200, you probably say, it's probably not enough because we could take PE money and we can grow. Offer us 250, 300, done, sold. Because I think you gotta look at time value money, and you gotta look at execution risk and macro risk and all that stuff. And I think that's the math that they all run in their head too. And so,
going along with that,
I do think it could be a shorter term play.
Yeah.
I think going along with that too is like, you know, one thing Chuck pointed out is like Lilly, for example, is you know, Lilly, they fully anticipate being like a $30 to $50 million customer. That's just
Yeah,
that one
they could
customer,
be
and then they
all
also
along.
have two mergers that they're looking at. Each would produce $30 million a year in revenue. They have those on the table right now, and they're pretty close. So I think that's the other
Catalyst that could juice it up.
that could make it, you know,
Yeah.
make it a sale happen as well.
Yeah, but there's also tax plan. I'm not a tax person, but the person you had before seemed like a very sharp tax, or a sharp planning person, right? So like one of the things I'll do with my own personal stuff is if it's going to be short term and I don't want to pay the ordinary income, I'll transfer that to a charitable remainder trust. And I'll have the charitable remainder trust own it. And that way, if 100 turns into $1 million, the whole $1 million goes into the CRT. And you can draw, like in my case, I'll draw the minimum down on it. I'll draw 4% of the fair market value of the charitable trust every year back as income. And it's got to come back to you the way that the income went in. But then I also do it where I actually have an accruing feature where I don't have to take the income. So I could accrue the income for 4, 5, 10 years, and then when you have another capital event, you can pay yourself back all the accrued income, or if the tax bracket's changed, or whatever else you want to do. And then you can take the CRTs and invest them in pretty highly appreciable stuff. It's because you're taking a percentage out of the total fair market value. You know, so if you have something that just went up 3 times in value, you can take back a lot of money in a very tax efficient way. So I mean, there's just a lot of strategies. Basically what I would, I'm not a planner, but what I would tell people is here's kind of what I'm doing, or tell me a little bit about your situation, and I'd say maybe you should consider this. So the other one that people use a lot of is self-directed IRAs. Now I self-direct all mine, and then I take some of the ones that I feel like are going to be short-term potentials, and I'll self-direct a Roth. And that way you don't really care. If it sells in 5 months, all the taxes, you're not paying taxes on that. You know, especially if they're unleveraged investments. And then if you really get tricky, you know, I've done them where you put pre-tax money in, and then if you think that there is something near term that's brewing on the sales side, I'll just convert the pre-tax to Roth, add it to your ordinary income, pay the tax, and then when you have to pop, no taxes, forever. Like, so there's just little structural things that you can do, just given whatever strategies you're trying to solve for. So, and that's one of the things I would just encourage everybody. It sounds like you have a really good group of people. Is just to ask each other what kind of things you do or you hear or what other people do, I learned so much from all the different partners that I've had, you know, who've been way more successful than me, and I ask them and they tell me. Like one of the estate planning things that I actually do to get assets out of my personal estate is when I make an investment, I don't do this on every investment, but I'll just set up an LLC and I will have 2 members, me, and then I'll have an irrevocable trust for the kids. I will then borrow, say I'm gonna put 100 grand, I'll borrow $100,000 to the LLC with a promissory note, be 1%, 10%, whatever you want, and then when the deal sells, I get paid back the money I borrowed in, plus any accrued interest, and then the profit goes 1% to me, 99% into the irrevocable trust for the kids. And then guess what just happened? You use none of your lifetime gifting exemptions. So all your funding, the trusts are with profit. You know, so there's those little things you can do, but the same thing you're gonna maybe do already, just structurally you can change something to make it do what you want it to do. So I can give you ideas on that, but not, just, that's probably it. Any questions on any of that stuff? I know we've probably talked a long time, but.
On the Cambridge deal, when it's a tech side, and again, this is just more curiosity, how you know, Sean's filled me in on, you know, how much due diligence and research you guys do.
Yeah.
I really enjoy hearing about that part of it.
Yeah.
And how you kind of find these 41 deals, right?
Yeah.
But like on the tech side, I'm curious, like, you know, there's just so much out there, even after the tech boom.
Yeah.
How much do you look at, like, you know, why hasn't Oracle bought them, or
Yeah.
yet, or why hasn't, you know, is that, I mean, that's got to be one of your first questions when you're meeting with them, right? Like,
Yeah.
what makes you go, and why haven't you flipped it yet?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think all those, you know, the big players, like the Oracles and the Microsofts and the Amazons, they can buy whoever they want, whenever they want.
Yeah.
You know, so I think as long as you feel like you have something that you compete with them on,
Yeah.
that, you know, will probably kind of annoy them and prod them, I think those channels are always being touched on the strategic side. But I think if you know that you can always add more value to get to the point where they are very much thinking about you, you know, that's when you you know, you start to do that. Like we see that with like Great Meta, for example. Another technology deal that we're part of. We put in $17 million. It's one of the ones we're taking public. I'm on the board. You know, that's one where we touch the strategics all the time. And they can see the enterprise clients that we have. They can kind of see what we're doing and how it's working and how it's solving things. And it creates the right moment at the right moment in time when we file an S1 to go public, that the strategics come out of the woodwork because they create urgency for that. You know, but otherwise you're just kind of letting them notice you and maybe filling them in on some of the progress. But that's why Cambridge met with IBM. But they also know that if it works for IBM, it also could work for 3 or 4 other people that compete in the space. You know.
Right.
But the technical side and the due diligence, we're not experts in everything. You know what I mean? We are not. You know, so what we love is that we have different people that do have expertise in different areas, and a lot of them are investors. So there's 600 plus investors. There's different people that we love to pull in. Anybody who wants to be involved, we love to have them involved to the extent that they, you know, have knowledge in the space or want to learn more about it. And then we run kind of the co-due diligence with a lot of those other family offices that do have people that are experts in that space, and then we'll help rely on a lot of that due diligence.
Are you gonna be able to join us on the vote?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what I would suggest,
We're
we're
staying here
almost
for
6 o'clock.
3 more days. We're staying here.
I would suggest we wrap this up here and then
Yes.
have more questions
That's fine.
on the vote, because it's 6 o'clock and it's gonna
Yep,
get through.
we can do it.